It's my pleasure and honor to introduce the third president of this organization, Carmen Badillo.
As I looked around, most of the other key people will be introduced on the agenda, but I would like to introduce the new Chief of Police for the City of San Antonio, Chief Charles Rodriguez. Also on stage, we have a guest person. We have Ambassador Bob Kruger, and as you all know, he is a candidate for the U.S. Senate. Now, in keeping with the C.O.P.S policy, we don't just invite candidates to our convention, but Mr. Kruger, please don't sit down. We have a policy, Mr. Kruger, that we always have candidates forum nights. And right now, we would like to know if you will be here when we call you for our Candidates Accountability Night. Okay? Plus, if you do win in the primaries, will you come back and meet with the C.O.P.S organization? Okay? You have heard it. He will come.
At this time, let's find out who is present and accounted for. To do this, we will call on the Credentials Committee chairpersons. Patricia Osuna, Our Lady of Angels. Virginia Ramirez, Quadrant Vice President from the Immaculate Conception. Angelina Garza, Quadrant Vice President from Our Lady of Good Counsel. Mrs. Osuna and Mrs. Ramirez, we are ready for the roll call.
The Credentials Committee is responsible for verifying all the members that are here today in their delegation. We need to know who's here today. And who is here today? As I call your delegation, stand up and be recognized. Remain standing as each local is called. Does everyone know where the West Side is and the Edgewood District is? Well, Edgewood is ready to celebrate their victories today, their victories in education and economic development. Are you ready? Are you ready, St. Jude's? San Gabriel, Holy Family Parish, San Martin de Porras, Christ the King, Our Lady of Good Counsel, St. John Birchman, Ms. Gallegos, and Reverend Father, the Edgewood Quadrant is here and ready to celebrate.
I am Patricia Osuna, Area Vice President, Our Lady of Angels Parish, and co-chairperson of the Credentials Committee. The Southside parishes of San Antonio have long fought for education and specifically for a college campus in our community. Celebrating a victory after 10 years of working for the campus are the Southside parishes. Are you celebrating St. Joseph South San, St. Clair, St. Philip of Jesus, St. Bonaventure, St. Leo, St. Henry, St. James, St. Leonard, Our Lady of Angels, Father Benavides, Mrs. Gallegos, the Southside parishes are here and ready to do business. Southside parishes remain standing.
I am Virginia Ramirez from Immaculate Conception Parish and Quadrant Vice President. The Central and the East Side quadrants are fighting for better housing and improved communities. The following parishes have been engaged in this work and should now stand and be recognized. Sacred Heart, Government Hill, San Alfonso, Immaculate Conception, Northeast C.O.P.S, Immaculate Heart of Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, San Juan de los Lagos, St. Stephen's, St. Agnes, and St. Timothy's. Father Benavides and Miss Gallegos, we have before you the 1983 delegation for the 10th Annual C.O.P.S Convention.
We would now like to introduce representatives from the other IAF organizations that will introduce their delegations to us. Stay standing, C.O.P.S, and give each of them a warm welcome.
I'm Margarita Sanchez with the PISO delegation from El Paso, Texas.
I am Miriam Stepp, co-chairperson of the Organizing Council of Allied Communities of Tarrant Act of Fort Worth. Delegates, please stand up.
I'm Bill Esom, co-chair of the Metropolitan Congregation Alliance. Leaders of MCA are here from all across San Antonio to wish C.O.P.S a healthy, happy, and powerful 10th anniversary, and we salute you in your efforts to make this city a better place in which to live.
MCA.
The TMO delegates here today salute C.O.P.S on its 10th anniversary. As we have worked to better our community, we have been inspired by the example that you have set before us. Would the 135 delegates from TMO please stand up?
My name is Juliet Garcia, and I come from the Rio Grande Valley. Our new organization encompasses 4 counties, Cameron, Star, Hidalgo, and Willacy. We represent over 200,000 families, and the valley has a lot of problems. We'd like to share with C.O.P.S their support that they have given us throughout our organizational stages. We already have begun to have people feel our strength. We already have begun to have people show that we want more than a representative democracy. We want a participatory democracy. Will the Valley Interfaith delegates please rise and salute C.O.P.S?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming from your cities to give us support. But before we continue with the agenda, guess what happened? Guess who's telling us we got to get our buses off their parking lot? Guess who? The City Water Board. They did it last year and they're doing it again this year. Que tercos, no? But they don't know that we have the chief of police here. And they don't know we have the mayor here. Mr. Mayor, if they impound our cars, will you get them out for us? Great. So leave your cars and buses there. Okay, Sonia for the government.
To you, with great opportunities, un gran honor y un gran placer, nuestra presidenta Sonia Hernández.
How you feeling? You look terrific. Last year, 5 days after his election to the top state seat, Governor Mark White came to the C.O.P.S convention and committed to working with us on education. Because of our joint efforts, today we have the Select Committee on Education headed by H. Ross Perot, and soon you're going to see the changes that we want to see happen in Edgewood, in Harlandale, in San Antonio, in Socorro, in Brownsville, in North Forest, in all of our poor school districts. And right now I'd like to recognize the person who has been working with us, who will address us briefly, the Governor of the state of Texas, Governor Mark White.
Thank you. During my campaign for governor, I had the pleasure of meeting with you and promised then that I would work with you during my administration. We have begun that work, and I've met on various occasions with your leadership in my office at the Capitol. I have been to Valley Interfaith and TMO, and in 2 weeks we'll visit EPISO in El Paso. And tomorrow I am going to Brownsville to oppose the burning of toxic waste in the Gulf of Mexico. Because I have found through our discussions that the cornerstones of my administration and your organization are very similar. They are sound, and they will support progress for the state of Texas. These cornerstones are education and economic development. Together we have set goals for the people of this state, and as equal partners in our quest, we must continue to work for quality education for all the children of Texas and to develop an economic climate fair to every Texan. Because of your perseverance, your diligent work, and faith in your mission, we are beginning to see the emergence of a coalition that includes this organization and the business community. Your president, Sonia Hernandez, and the C.O.P.S staff have provided able and effective leadership. This past week, in testimony before the Select Committee on Education, I was delighted to see how well received the proposals for equalization aid for the people of our state was on the part of that committee. And I want to thank you, Sonia, for the fine presentation that you made. I want to wish you the best at this convention and present to you today a proclamation in honor of the 10th anniversary of this organization, if I might read that proclamation. In 1973, Communities Organized for Public Service, otherwise known as C.O.P.S, was organized to enhance the quality of life for the people in San Antonio area. C.O.P.S now serves as the older sister of the Texas Interfaith Network, a structured alliance of local community organizations working tirelessly to solve community concerns. C.O.P.S has become a viable partner in San Antonio's decision-making process. It has been successful in part because of its ability to identify pressing issues, develop solutions, and implement meaningful changes in the areas of education, economic development, and government services. During this last decade, C.O.P.S has developed many programs to enhance the quality of life for the people of the San Antonio area and has made a commitment to help shape its future. Therefore, I, as governor, hereby designate today, November the 20th, 1983, as C.O.P.S Day in Texas.
Governor, this convention has heard your words, but we would like to just hear one more time your recommitment to education, and we would like you to continue to work with us so that another school year will not begin until some meaningful changes in funding occur for the property-poor school districts.
I am committed to join with you and others across this state to redouble our efforts working with the legislature in making certain that we have equalization aid for our school districts, improved salary structures for our teachers, and enhanced quality of education for every child in Texas. The only thing that I can think of that would prevent us from doing this is if they've towed my car away. Mr. Mayor, I hope they haven't.
I introduce the founding and the first president of C.O.P.S, Andres Saravia.
10 years ago, C.O.P.S was really the beginning of our education in San Antonio. Since 1973, we have learned many lessons that have formed the philosophy of C.O.P.S. For example, 10 years ago, the City Council did not care how many of our people drowned or lost homes and property because of flooding. 10 years ago, a school board tried to build an administration building that was not needed. But no more, right? No more. 10 years ago, not one politician attended our first convention. How many are here today? Ten years ago, when I would get phone calls telling me not to start my car in the morning, I knew we had found the jugular of the power brokers. And believe me, that's when changes really started to happen. 10 years ago, the memory of life under the insensitive, unresponsive, arrogant, and oppressive regime of the Good Government League kept C.O.P.S focused and gave us courage and energy to go on in spite of the demands and the hardships. Remember, power is never given, it must be won. 10 years ago, San Antonio's power brokers said of cops, leave them alone. They're Mexicans. They can't organize. Well, we made liars out of them, didn't we? Here we are, 10 years old. We have power. We have our culture. We have our faith. We have our communities. We have our dignity. And can you believe it? We're still Mexican. Yes, we're still Mexicans, but Mexicans willing to work with blacks, whites, business, professionals, and unions to build a San Antonio where the fruits of the American dream are realized by all. In 10 years, C.O.P.S has never deserted or neglected its constituencies. C.O.P.S used to say they feared us rebel rousers. What they really feared was the successful revolution that we started that changed San Antonio from a government of the few, by a few, and for a few, to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Vayan con Dios, adelante y viva C.O.P.S.
At this time, our next item on the agenda is the nominating committee report. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Tino Gonzalez, outgoing Executive Treasurer, Mr. Gonzalez, and Antonio Villarreal, Area Vice President of St. Agnes, to give us the nominating committee reports and conduct the election.
It is indeed a pleasure to report these bona fide and certified candidates. For first clergy vice president, Father Bart Flatt. For second clergy vice president, Father Herbert Jones. For treasurer, Mr. George Osuna. For secretary, Mrs. Mary Segovia. For executive vice president, Mrs. Helen Ayala. For first vice president, Mrs. Lily Lopez. For the office of president, Mrs. Sonia Hernandez. This year, for the first time in the history of the C.O.P.S organization, each quadrant vice president was elected in October at each quadrant mini convention. The following candidates were elected. From the Central Quadrant, Mrs. Virginia Ramirez. For the South Side Quadrant, Mr. Pascual Segovia. For the East Side Quadrant, Mr. Andres Cortez. For Edgewood West Quadrant, Ms. Angelina Garza. Madam Chair, this concludes the nominating committee report. And Mr. Villarreal, we are ready to vote.
The candidates for the C.O.P.S executive positions are now on stage and are unopposed. Is there a motion that they be elected by acclamation? I hear a motion. Do I hear a second? second. It has been moved and seconded that we elect this slate of officers by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Fellow leaders and delegates, we now have our officers for the C.O.P.S organization for 1983 to 1984.
It's my great pleasure to introduce our newly elected president for this coming year, Sonia Hernandez. Let's welcome her warmly.
All right, let's move on to business. The C.O.P.S organization has been around for 10 years, and we have a lot to celebrate today. You've heard it, but let's hear it for real now. Let's begin with the victory statements of what we've been able to do in the past 10 years. To begin those, I'd like to introduce Mary Segovia, Esperanza Hernandez, Janie Gonzalez, and Andy Cortez.
C.O.P.S has never made empty promises and does not count its chickens before they hatch. Mr. Osuna and ACCG Board of Trustees, C.O.P.S will be at the groundbreaking in December and at the opening of the college in the fall of 1985, right?
People living in public housing were afraid to go out. Our maintenance problems were being ignored. Because of C.O.P.S, we do not have to put up with vandalism and threats to our lives. We have our maintenance workers on the ball. We are people that can make a difference and live in dignity.
Remember 1973 before BC, C.O.P.S? Our homes were being destroyed because of flooding. Since then, we have redirected over $250 million to our communities in capital improvement projects, and our victories are there for all to see.
C.O.P.S has fought for housing. Because of this, we have the colonias Santa Cruz, San Alfonso, Concepcion, Amistad, Romero, Fort Sam Houston Gateway Housing, Select Housing. Last Friday, we turned over the keys to 5 new homeowners in Vista Verde. I ask you, is this a victory? Que viva C.O.P.S!
C.O.P.S has won many victories on zoning. We will continue to work on zoning to preserve our neighborhoods for our families. Que viva C.O.P.S!
When our children have to walk miles to the next library and turns in to be a movable, portable bookmobile, C.O.P.S says this is an injustice. Over the last 10 years, the C.O.P.S organization has been instrumental to have constructed 4 libraries in San Antonio, and they are Memorial, Basan, and Cortez. And last week, the newest library in San Antonio, the Collins Gardens Library. Viva C.O.P.S!
Potholes, dust, mud, y los charcos de agua que se quedan en las calles por días did and still describe many of our streets. But today we can see the changes that 10 years of C.O.P.S have made. Thank you.
Before C.O.P.S, the City Water Board directed the city's growth deliberately to the north side by turning on the faucet of funds for developers. C.O.P.S turned off this faucet by asking the question, who pays and who benefits? C.O.P.S asked those questions back then, C.O.P.S asked them now, and will ask them in the future, because we will not be ripped off, will we? Y que viva C.O.P.S!
C.O.P.S has been effective in keeping utility rate increases down. However, the biggest burden on the families of San Antonio
is the South Texas Nuclear Project, the bottomless pit monster that swallows and swallows and doesn't deliver, right?
Right.
And we will continue to fight it until it whisses, right? Viva C.O.P.S!
I am proud to announce that in our historic existence in San Antonio, the C.O.P.S. organization has raised more than $1,200,000 from our communities to keep our organization strong. We, C.O.P.S., have never asked for even 1 penny from the city, the county, the state, or the federal government. We don't want their money because we have dignity and pride in ourselves. And we don't work for politicians, we work for our communities to bring out power in our communities. Que viva C.O.P.S.
Our children are our most precious possession. The state constitution of Texas guarantees every child a quality education, but in over 100 years it is not delivered. The IAF network, with the leadership of C.O.P.S., has met with H. Ross Perot, Governor White, Lieutenant Governor Hobby, and Comptroller Bullock to make education the #1 issue in this state. We will fight until every child in Texas is guaranteed an education. And you know what? We're going to win. No te agüites, que viva C.O.P.S!
2 years ago, EDF didn't come across on its promises, but C.O.P.S. did. We formed an economic development committee that has been working and bringing the kinds of victories that we're accustomed to. And I'd like to introduce now, for the victory statements on economic development, the chairperson and the newly elected executive vice president, Mrs. Helen Ayala.
We have just heard the victories of the past 10 years. And because of those victories, the infrastructure is now in place to pursue an economic development strategy. C.O.P.S. has economic development strategy in all of our communities. In the South Side, C.O.P.S. has worked in acquiring the South Side campus. That should be a catalyst for growth. In the Central Quadrant, Vista Verde is well on its way. This project is a mix of commercial, industrial, and housing development, and it's been C.O.P.S. that's kept it alive. And in the far west side, we have Edgewood, the poorest school district in the state, and the C.O.P.S. model for economic development. 2 years ago, the Edgewood C.O.P.S. Economic Development Committee was formed, and a deliberate decision was made to aggressively pursue business, housing, industry, labor-intensive industry that will provide good jobs. And in those 2 years, we have major accomplishments. They are H-E-B Grande, the biggest H-E-B in the state of Texas. The revitalization of Las Palmas. A proposed 3-story building, all to the tune of over $8 million. We have Sprague Electric with 500 jobs and more to come. We have also had meetings with bankers, bank presidents, and major developers to see what we have to offer. And I have an announcement. The C.O.P.S. Committee and the Sisters of Divine Providence Committee work together at going to different developers to see what could be built on that land. They right now are negotiating and looking at 3 different proposals for major development on that tract of land. The revitalization of Las Palmas has been a continued interest to the development of that area. Omni Interest has taken the lead, and representing Omni Interest is Mr. David Sachs with a statement.
I feel proud and honored to be part of your 10th anniversary celebration today. 10 years of grassroots involvement to make our community more responsive to the needs and concerns of all citizens. 10 years of participation in the political process, a model of democracy in action. As we move forward in the next 10 years, I pledge my support and that of my company to economic development in the inner city, the south side, and the west side. And I challenge other developers in the area to participate with me in this effort. Thank you very much.
We have had a lot of support from different areas. In the provincial, from the Congregation of Missionhurst Priests, came all the way from Washington, D.C. to make this special announcement. Father Walter Dedna. Father.
Hi, C.O.P.S. It's good to see you again, and my gosh, you're looking stronger than ever. I want to congratulate you, and I want to use the opportunity today to announce that Missionhurst CICM, that I as provincial, together with our priest, are ready to make a pledge and a commitment to C.O.P.S for $200,000, money that will be made available to help build up an economic development fund to further help C.O.P.S and bringing about economic development in the area. And furthermore, I want to also announce that I have directed a request to our Superior General in Rome and asked him to follow our example and also to make $200,000 available as matching fund also for what we, the CICM priests here in the United States, are doing. And Mrs. Ayala, I am ready to sign our contract agreement.
Oh. This is really an investment in our communities. And we will show San Antonio what it really means to be an all-America city. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce a person that has been working with us on the city level, who has been working with economic development and many other issues, and whereas we don't always see eye to eye, we must say that many times we do. And at this time, let me introduce the Mayor of San Antonio, Mayor Henry Cisneros.
Thank you very much. At the beginning, 10 years ago, people didn't know what C.O.P.S was. There was that first convention at Jefferson that people read about in the newspapers. They heard that Ernie Cortez was moving through the neighborhoods trying to find out what the people thought their problems were. And they knew there was a general stirring of something going on. But there had been many political personalities, many political movements before, and so people just looked the other way. What they didn't know was that something was beginning that was going to change the face of San Antonio forever, and that this city would never be the same again when C.O.P.S had come to life. What they didn't know was that there was an unprecedented, unmatched organization coming into being because it was rooted on the people and on the churches. And it was not based on somebody's ego or ambitions or personalities, but it was creating new leaders, real leaders, who knew what the problems of the people were. C.O.P.S is strong. C.O.P.S is stronger than ever. Some of you may have seen the survey that was released this week by a national corporation said that not only in San Antonio, not only in Texas, but the #1 most respected Hispanic organization in the country is none other than San Antonio Communities Organized for Public Services. Congratulations on that. Your successes have come because you have held fast to one rule, and that is that the people shall be heard. The people shall be represented. The will of the people shall be respected. And so it's my pleasure to read a proclamation that reads as follows. Given the outstanding work of San Antonio Communities Organized for Public Services, C.O.P.S, in encouraging participation by the citizenry in the democratic process for the last 10 years, let it be proclaimed that November 14th through 20th be designated C.O.P.S Week in San Antonio. Thank you for what you have done to my city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We know that recently you were instrumental in pulling together a group of major developers in order to attract desirable industry to Edgewood. C.O.P.S wants you now to commit to set your sights to a larger arena, to call together with C.O.P.S the heads of national corporations such as Walter Haas of Levi Strauss, or Robert Anderson of Arco, or William Norris of Control Data, those people who have a reputation and an image for creative investments and strategies in minority communities. This is what we want for San Antonio, and we want San Antonio to be the gateway to the Southwest that includes El Paso and the Valley. But Mayor, will you work to pull together this kind of meeting within 60 days?
It is my honor to be able to commit to telling those persons, I'm all choked up about this, you understand? My honor to be able to commit to telling the nation about how C.O.P.S and economic development and the future of this city and the future of the Hispanic community across this nation are all tied up one in the same. It'll be my honor to commit to help in any way that I can. Goodbye.
Let me introduce the immediate past president of the C.O.P.S organization, Mrs. Beatriz Cortez.
And now I would like to introduce a San Antonian, a person responsible for all IAF organizing in Texas. C.O.P.S in San Antonio, Allied Communities of Tarrant and Fort Worth, El Piso Interfaith Sponsoring Committee from El Paso, Texas, the Metropolitan Organization in Houston, and lastly, Valley Interfaith in the Valley of Texas. The man who had a dream, who joined hands with our first president, Mr. Andres Sarabia, and said, I think we can have something going. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the founding organizer of C.O.P.S, Mr. Ernesto Cortez, Jr.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here before this impressive throng, this assembly of past, present, and future C.O.P.S leaders. But in many ways, you are the future, all of you, of San Antonio, the state of Texas, and the nation. It's humbling, however, to be asked to talk after some of the courageous and effective leaders, your past presidents, Mr. Sarabia, Mrs. Gallego, Mrs. Badillo, Mrs. Cortez, and of course your current president, Sonia Hernandez. All of them have developed in a way that no one thought was possible 10 years ago. In many ways, the students have taught the teachers a great deal. But they have grown not in a vacuum. They have grown because you have grown, because you have had the patience and the courage and the persistence to challenge them, to confront them when they were becoming comfortable, and to comfort them in times of tragedy and crisis. I can say all this because I know what C.O.P.S has meant to all of you. Yes, it's been a vehicle for change, for accomplishing goals, winning victories, all of which have been enumerated here today. They're too numerous to go into. Your mayor, your governor, everyone here who has come to salute you has itemized all your victories. But C.O.P.S has been more than a vehicle for change, more than a power organization. It is one of the most precious models in all of American society of democracy in action. C.O.P.S is an illustration of the way in which people grow to maturity as they begin to bargain, to negotiate, to learn the art of public discourse and political argument. Because of all that you have done, you've given hope to those who have grown cynical and skeptical of the possibility of the renewal of our institutions, economic, social, and political. Yet in order to really understand C.O.P.S, you have to look at San Antonio before C.O.P.S, some of which has been itemized here today. Historically, San Antonio was a colonial society controlled by a tight-knit oligarchy of a few powerful people who allowed no room for meaningful participation by the majority and minority, 53% of whom were Mexican American. But more than that, it was a city dominated by the rich and powerful, symbolized by the country club, the Texas Cavaliers, and the Good Government League. A city that prided itself on low wages and massive resignation and passivity of its working poor, black, white, and Mexican American. The rich and powerful talked of initiative. They even talked of enterprise. But like their heroes, Ronald Reagan and John Connally, they believed in socialism for the rich and free enterprise for the poor. They made some very destructive decisions for San Antonio. You know what they are. You know where they put the growth generators. The University of Texas campus, San Antonio Ranch, and you also know where they put the sewage treatment plants. They got all the benefits, you got the rest. Mayor Cisneros has already talked about the rapacious Community Water Development Fund. He's already talked about a lot of the bad decisions that were made, so I don't need to bore you with the grotesque details of the arrogant decision-making that was San Antonio. Nor need to remind you of the flip side of those oppressive years of poor school districts, flooding in homes, bad streets, no parks, few libraries, fewer books, but worst of all, no access, no opportunity for meaningful participation in public life. All of that has changed now, but it's changed because you made a difference. With all due respect to the men and women assembled here who have run for public office, especially those of you who are sensitive to the needs of your constituencies, it's because of C.O.P.S that we have a mayor in San Antonio who is Mexicano. We never endorsed him. You didn't have to. You had accountability nights. You did voter registration. You got the vote out. But most importantly, you taught people how to understand the issues and how to participate in city council meetings and all the decisions of public life. You lifted the shroud of secrecy that dominated decision-making in San Antonio. You provided access for the west side and the south side and the east side. You made it possible for all those council people to be elected south of Culebra. Today, San Antonio is one of the most open cities in the United States. It is a place where the values of pluralism, family, and freedom of speech and of assembly have become a concrete reality. Oh, we still have our rigid and our mediocre public officials. We haven't rooted them all out. We haven't curbed all of them. There's still arrogant concentrations of power. But the process of decision-making in San Antonio has effectively curbed their excesses. And because of that, you have become a model for Texas. Because of that, there is a TMO, there is an APISO, there is a Valley Interfaith, there's an Allied Communities of Tarrant, there's an MCA and Eastside Apostolate. And because of that, the other organizations here assembled draw inspiration from your growth and from your tenacity. I'm here to congratulate you, to salute you on behalf of the IEF Cabinet, behalf of the IEF Network. But I'm also, hopefully, here to challenge you a bit. Your work is not done. You will be great if and only if you are faithful to the vision upon which you were founded, not to ever be content until you have taught those who have no stake, no role, no status, how to responsibly and effectively participate in the potential of our democratic life. If you do so, you will act out the wisdom and tradition of two great value systems. You will have synthesized the Judeo-Christian tradition and the values of a democratic and free and open society. But more important, you will be an organization which reaches out, teaches, empowers the outcast, those who have no stake. And you will be like the father in the story of the prodigal son, who upon seeing his son returning home, gave his son the symbols of respect and dignity and self-worth, the ring, the cloak, and the sandals. Because only those who had no sandals were the outcast. They had no status, no right to participate. What C.O.P.S has done is brought new life, brought people who are outside the democratic society into the life of the community.
You know, at the national level, there will be elections this year. The decision makers are going to be held accountable for their work in Congress and for their work in the White House. We all know that in 1984, there will be key elections. Earlier you heard Bob Kruger saying he would attend an accountability night, a candidates forum for his particular race in replacing Senator John Tower. I see that State Senator Lloyd Doggett has joined us. Senator Doggett, would you stand? And I would ask you the same question. Will you join the C.O.P.S organization in a candidates forum to be held before the May primary? That's a yes. And if you are the Democratic candidate after the primary, will you meet with us again to continue the accountability forums? Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask that the area vice presidents of the organization, the chairpersons, the previous executive leaders, all the past executive vice presidents come to the front. Please move forward. And at this time, I would like to introduce somebody that's going to excite St. John Birchman's a great deal. That's a pastor from St. John Birchman's, the newly elected clergy vice president, Father Bart Flatt.
At the wedding feast of Cana, Jesus kept the best wine for last. At this feast of cups today, we have kept the best guests for last. And he is really not a guest, he is one of us. We, the people of San Antonio, know Archbishop Flores as the champion and the friend of the poor and the powerless. In his pastoral letter, the Archbishop took a strong stand for family and community. And from the very beginnings of C.O.P.S, the Archbishop has not only been a supporter, but a true leader of our organization. Convention 83, I want you to rise and to give a standing, loud ovation to our leader, Archbishop Patricio Flores.
I would like to invite all of you to look at your hands. And just look at your hands. You know, no two hands are alike. This is why when you do something wrong, you leave your fingerprint and they can catch you. But your hands are very sacred, and they have a tremendous potential. Your hands have the potential of pulling the trigger that can kill a man or kill a nation. Our hands have the potential of pushing the button that will destroy the world. Our hands have the potential of crushing and oppressing. And if you want to use your hands for that, I think it is a horrible mistake and it is a crime. I have tried to interpret the call of C.O.P.S. And this afternoon I was trying to discern it. And it's really an invitation that we use our hands not to destroy, but to build up. First, to build up communities of peace, of harmony, where men and women feel as equals. And after all, we are. That we use our hands to build up the schools that teach us to live as a family, as brothers and sisters. And maybe more important than all of that, the hands to build up the greatness of what each and every one of us is, and to build ourselves up in such a way that we are willing to be used in the right sense as bridges that bring people to people and people to God. If that's not what you were about, in conscience I could not join you. But because this is what you were doing, I have no regret whatsoever. But I just simply ask you to often in the next 10 decades look at your hands and just simply ask, am I destroying? I hope the answer will be no. Am I helping to build up? May the answer always be yes. When Bishop Pop and I were in Rome recently, I reported to the Holy Father on many things. And one of the things I reported on C.O.P.S. Because in case he should get it from somebody else, I wanted him to get it from me. And when I said what you had done, and I don't want to go through this because it's already been summarized. And when I said what I knew you were wanting to do, he simply said, will you give them my blessing? And we brought it in writing, a papal blessing, but he also said, when you gather with them, bestow upon them my pontifical blessing and ask them that as believers to go forth, continue working to make of this world a better one in which to live. And so it gives us, first of all, a great satisfaction to present to all of you in the person of the President of C.O.P.S. this papal blessing that reads, His Holiness cordially imports his apostolic blessing to San Antonio Communities Organized for Public Services 10th anniversary. And it was signed on the 27th of September 1983. Now this is a written one. And both of us who were empowered to give you the blessing will extend hands over all of you, that you be guided so that your work will be done in harmony, nonviolent, in a positive way, endeavoring to rebuild not only things in service to people, but people themselves. May the Lord Jesus be with you, that he may defend you, within you that he may strengthen you, over you that he may inspire you, ahead of you that he may lead you in all that you say and in all that you do. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit descend and remain with you now and forever and ever. Amen. This Mass has ended, or rather...
Please remain standing for our closing prayer as we join with our choir to sing El Padre Nuestro.
Santificado, santificado sea tu nombre. Déjanos tu reino, Señor. Hágase tu santa voluntad en la tierra y en el cielo. Haremos tu santa voluntad. Estás en el cielo, santificado, santificado sea tu nombre. No nos dejes caer en tentación, antes bien, líbranos del mal. No nos dejes caer en tentación, líbranos del mal. Padre nuestro, que estás en el cielo, santificado, santificado sea tu nombre.
Happy birthday to the greatest organization on the nation, to the C.O.P.S organization. I call this meeting to adjournment. Y que viva C.O.P.S! Viva!
Congratulations.
Unities Organized for Public Services 11th Annual Convention will be held Tuesday, October 16, 1984 at 7 p.m. at the Scottish Rite Hall at 308 Avenue E.